David Seymour made an announcement today. It's kind of gone a little bit to the back of the news cycle because I think of the Gaza late breaking news. But a new initiative from ACT Party to get into local politics.
We're here to talk about ACT's campaign, ACT Local, to start running candidates and local communities up and down this country under an ACT banner. The reason for doing this is I've been a Member of Parliament for 10 years. Many times people have come to me with problems in their community where, if I was honest, I'd say that's actually up to your council. The answer is to elect better councillors. Now, I don't usually say that because people want their problems solved by the person in front of them. However, I feel it would be better if when people go to vote for their councillors, they have common sense people in their community standing under a set of values that they can identify and hold them accountable for.
So that's the announcement that's been made. The second part of the announcement was they got asked what does ACT Local believe in? So what are the principles and values going to be of ACT Local?
We believe if people have the option of voting for local candidates in their community who've signed up to a set of values for which ACT is well known, reducing waste and getting lower rates, stopping trying to get people out of their cars, stopping the constant interruption in people's transport.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
But just quietly, do you not think that this image is possibly going to come back to haunt him? I mean, what Photoshop could do, Whānau, just saying, what Photoshop could do with how he's holding his arm and stuff. I mean, I'm just thinking out loud what Photoshop could do and then get sent to bigherodnews@gmail.com.
Only we knew people that were good at Photoshop.
Yeah, if only we knew
don't
one.
know.
If only we knew one.
Sport that drives people mad, and finally getting rid of the racial discrimination that has crept into council politics. I think that's something that people would love to vote for.
That's the correct response there, Chewie. So we'll chat after this one. There's a couple more clips, but this is an interesting part, and I've written down some notes for this one, how things are going to work, right? How things will work in it. So he says something in this conversation, and he says this words, on things like race. He goes like division on things like race. And I'm begging you journalists to start to think about questioning David Seymour when he brings up race. Because my question would be, Mr. Seymour, you said division and you gave an example of things like race. What are some of the other things? So like race and like what else? Because if there's nothing else, as we've been saying for 2 or 3 years now, he's only talking about division based on race. Because when he says like race, he's saying, well, that's an example of division amongst all the others like race. What are the other ones? That's what I want to know, Mr. Seymour, the other ones that you think are so important.
It's important that we keep working on our campaigning machinery. ACT is growing enormously. We've been running bigger and bigger campaigns, and from an ACT Party point of view, this is an opportunity to show more New Zealanders the values that we stand by: less government waste, more freedom to choose on things like transport, and less discrimination based on things like race.
Yeah, less discrimination based on things like race. Less discrimination based on what other things, Mr. Seymour? Because you're saying it like it's one of a series of things, but I would challenge you that you have nothing else to back it up because all you ever talk about is race. That's why people think you're race baiting.
Values that we stand by: less government waste, more freedom to choose on things like transport, and less discrimination based on things like race. And also, frankly, from the party's point of view, is an opportunity to work on our campaigning capacity, which is important over going into 26.
Chewie, I do have 2 other clips, but your first thoughts around ACT Local. What are you thinking?
I think for all of you out there, chat, wherever you are in the country, you can already think of a city councillor or a regional councillor that will absolutely jump at this. That they already align with ACT's I guess, vibe, that they don't want to pay rates and they don't want to fund nice things, and the council should just devolve into running car parks and rubbish collection, and that's about it. I think the only saving grace here is that David has been very clear that there will be no resources given to them. There'll be no funding or campaigning or anything like that, that these people will be up to their fundraising themselves. Whether there is some shifty fundraising or just nudge, wink, wink, here's a candidate that you can funnel money to, that remains to be seen. I think ACT have finally noticed something that the Cookers noticed last local body election time, and that is that it is easier to get candidates affecting local change in councils because people don't vote for it. People don't turn out for these sort of things. And overwhelmingly, things like ratepayers groups and don't put up the rates and all of that sort of thing seems to be a way to end up in council. It is a vote winner. I mean, here in Dunedin, I already saw an affiliated group of councillors that are running for office drop that word of like minimizing rates increases. And I called it out then, and I will call it out wherever I see it. Anybody that is talking about trying to lower rates in the wake of Three Waters going away and in the wake of climate change has got their head up their own ass. And those are the people that ACT is going to want to talk to because they've traditionally found their base with people that have their head up their own ass.
So, Chewie, as you always do, if you don't believe in spiritual, is the next piece perfectly without knowing what's coming up. The title to this next piece is Act Local is something that will appeal to the people who vote in local body politics. This will be something that will be dangerous to our worldview if we're interested in having our worldview represented in local body politics, because this is the kind of thing that Chewie's just mentioned, the ratepayers group. They are ACT's audience now. So this idea will be attractive to those people. I wouldn't be surprised if you saw a fairly heavy presence, maybe not this year, but in the next local body election, of ACT nominees, because this is exactly the kind of thing that the people who vote, who are typically older, typically white, and typically complain more about their rates, are already ACT voters.
Far too many things for far too many people and discover they can't pay the bills, while in reality they have leaky pipes, clogged roads, not enough parking, too many vanity projects that aren't actually making the proverbial boat go faster. That is a core ACT value. Get the government focused on the things where it can make a difference for ratepayers or taxpayers' money. Then there's this question of transport. For far too long we've been trying to change the way that people get around instead of facilitating them to live the lives as they would like to. We're not into social engineering. If a cycleway can actually be occupied and useful, then we're all over it. But who's seen one of those?
So just think about that again and think about the local body curmudgeons. I obviously would disagree with everything he's saying, because what he's doing is he's putting value in things that he sees value in. He's not putting value in cycle lanes. If they can't be put in the ledger as a profit-making opportunity, he doesn't value them. At least that's what he pretends, if it's something. But this is the language that those ratepayer groups like and respond to, and will like this idea. Chewie?
So here's my little pushback on his anti-cycle lane bullshit. And I'm going to paraphrase one of Dunedin's local councillors and his excellent pushback on the same line when it happened here in Dunedin. Is people point to a cycle lane with nobody in it at a particular time of day and go, see, look, nobody's using it. Nobody does the same thing for a road.
Yeah, true.
You go out and take a picture of a road with no cars on it and go, see, we don't need this.
Yeah, very fair.
And then the flip side of it is if you see, let's say 15 cars on a street, that's got quite a bit of visual impact, doesn't it? What about 15 bikes in the same space? Doesn't have the same visual impact. And you can't build something and then see it full to capacity straight away. Here in
Yeah.
Dunedin, people quite often say, who would ride a bike to work in Dunedin in shitty weather? This morning was abysmal. And I saw people with cargo bikes taking kids to school, on their way to work, all of that. People are using these facilities. But it's always like, oh, it's a waste of money. The transition period is not allowed to happen. And when David's saying, why can't we help people move around in the way that they want to, does that not include cyclists? Does that not include people that want to use public transport? Because those people, believe it or not, David, are ratepayers, are taxpayers, and deserve infrastructure for them as well.
The other thing is, of course, this idea, as you've just brought up, and he talks about in the way that they want to. We don't have any kind of system, central government, local body, where we rule by referendum or rule by mob rule. Because if we did, then okay, so let's let them live the way they want to live. That's his line. So what if they don't want to pay rates no more, David? What if they don't want that? What if that's the way they want to live? Of course, you're not going to accept that. It's also a very wealthy way of thinking about things, to have the money to make the choices to live the way you want to live. Like, some people aren't afforded that same privilege because they can't afford to live the way they want to live. And this is what he's doing right now. And he's putting out there a privileged position of people with money, and it's not, he's not being truthful. Maybe not that he's actively lying, but that he'll only support what people want to a certain point, because then if what people want doesn't work for the ACT narrative, then we're not going to do it. So, but this is the language, Chewie, that those ratepayers groups like, which is why I say voters, the typical voter in local body election, I think they'll be all over this. Let's get to the end of this, and then there's one more clip.
We're not into social engineering. If a cycleway can actually be occupied and useful, then we're all over it. But who's seen one of those? And finally, there's endless racial discrimination in councils, and we just have a simple vision of a country where each person is valued for their common humanity. We champion that at central government level. We intend to champion it at local government level.
So I feel like we've really covered all of that off, Chewie. Maybe we'll just go straight into this last bit. Unless there's anything else you particularly want to add.
I just want to say one thing, and I can only speak for here in Dunedin, but I am going to be an absolute menace to candidates and others at any ratepayers group meeting that I can get to. I urge other people to do that in their own areas. Go to those ratepayers group and argue with them.
So I believe Mr. Seymour has standing in claiming that various historical figures probably would have voted for ACT. He does it again today. Let's have a look.
It's a good question. Well, look, never say never. But I just make the point that we're looking for people to stand in councils. If Jesus comes back and says, I want to stand for Auckland, for Mayor of Wellington, we might say, buddy, with that hair and beard, how could we not endorse you? By the way, the ACT Party is not actually going to bring back Jesus. That was clearly a joke, just in case anyone starts to get worried about it, all right? Thank you very much for all your time. Do I reckon Jesus would support it?
Jesus! I don't like that laugh.
You know what? I believe that Jesus very well might support ACT from what I know about him. He believed that... Jesus believed that each person had inherent dignity, was made in the image of God, Imago Dei, and deserved to be treated with universal human rights. In many respects, the underlying teachers of Jesus and the ACT Party overlap, but I just want to be clear, the ACT Party is not promising to disinter Guy Fawkes, Jesus, or any historical figure to stand for mayor, council, or any other position. Thank you very much.
There you go, Chewie. So Jesus would vote for ACT. He is.
We're talking about the same Palestinian socialist.
Yeah, that's the first thing, Palestinian, right? So I don't know how that fits with ACT and ACT supporters, but the guy who was more concerned about the widows and orphans and basically pushed back against society and the powerful, that woke guy.
Correct me if I'm wrong here, but he was also pretty good at feeding people, apparently. Could cater to large groups of people.
He could cater
with
to large groups of people.
100% delivery rate, on time,
yep.
perfect temperature.
And somehow he spread just a couple of loaves and fishes through thousands of people at the same time. So what a return on investment, Chewie.
What an
very good
unhinged thing to say. Like, okay, I can understand why the reporter there asked that question, because it plays into other things that he said about various historical figures that he reckons would, for some reason, vote for ACT. It's a dumb line of questioning. I can understand why they did it, though. My challenge to reporters, because I know you watch the show, is next time David Seymour does something stupid like this, what I want you to do is go, what the fuck are you on about? Just don't indulge him. This is nonsense. This reeks to me of a dead cat.
Yeah.
This is him going out there and saying just something egregious. The ACT and local government thing, who the fuck cares? But the only thing you see David Seymour in the news for weeks now is his utter incompetence at feeding school children. And maybe he's just really tired of that news cycle. So it's time, because he called this press conference. This isn't just like a stand-up and he's made a comment. He has summoned reporters to his location, gone and stolen a cone from somewhere, and come out with a bunch of nonsense to get something else going in the news cycle. And in a way, we're falling for it because we're talking about his ridiculous comments about Jesus. Is this him just trying to throw us away from talking about another week of poor stories about feeding school children, which he is somehow utterly incapable of doing?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm listening to you, but all I can still think is I wonder what could be photoshopped into this image. That's really the only thing going through my brain.
You wonder, do you?
I do.
You wonder. You wonder if that can be photoshopperied into a massive dildo.
I have no idea.
Oh, okay. Is that plausible deniability there?
I'm just wondering.
Don't do it, people. Don't do it. Don't do it.